For more videos on people's struggles, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Hello and welcome to People's Dispatch. Today we have with us Roger Waters. Roger, great to have you.
Very nice to be here again. Well,
the week in October from the 5th to the 10th is the International Week of Anti-Imperialist Struggles. I immediately thought of you, when this week was announced, because so much of your work, Roger, is about war. And with great feeling, you've written about war and its, impact on the world. One of my favorite songs, I think, of yours is The Gunner's Dream, which was, in the 1983 Final Cut album. Tell us a little bit about that song and about what it meant for you to write with such feeling about war and the problems of war.
Well, that song is interesting because it's part of my Grantchester heritage. Because isn't there a line in one of Rupert Brooke's poems that goes, "If I should die, say only this of me, there is a corner of some foreign field that is forever England." So that's in the back of my mind. Now, having said that, The Gunner's Dream was originally part of the war narrative, i.e. what we learn from The Gunner's Dream is that the school teacher in the war who turns into this terrible tyrant in Pink's Childhood, a grammar school in England, is actually ex-RAF and was probably a pilot of a bomber and whatever. And at the beginning of that song on the record, he's listening to the gunner's final words on the intercom. So you hear all that, which is the voice that I do in the background to add a little kind of drama and atmosphere to the beginning of that song.
A group of businessmen has announced plans to build a nuclear fallout shelter at Peterborough in Cambridge.
3 High Court judges have cleared the way for Canberra.
It was announced today that the replacement for the Atlantic conveyor, the container ship lost in the...
So, yeah, the song. The thing is, why is everything about war? Because we wake up with it. Every morning we wake up. And almost our waking thoughts on most days, well, it might be anything. It might be, oh, look, the sun's out or whatever. But soon after that, it's inescapable to get away from the fact that still, how long is it? 100 years after the war to end all wars and 70 years after the Second World War, still our hearts are bleeding every morning for the pain that all those millions of people affected by our imperial wars around the globe suffer every day of their lives because we're killing their children and their loved and our own to some extent. I mean, there are Frenchmen and young Englishmen and Americans going off and being, rammed down the barrels of cannon and blown to bits. But they are nothing compared with, the foreigners who die in these imperial wars. And so I live with that. I live with the inequity of it every day of my life. And because, I guess to some extent, I'm more sensitized to the loss of a loved one in war because my father was killed when I was about that big. Well, yeah, about that big. It is an obsession that will never leave me until we stop doing it. And we won't stop doing it until we admit to ourselves that the only reason we do it is because there's money in it. We do it for profit, not for us. We get nothing out of it. But they do, the ruling classes do. They make fortunes out of it. And they use those fortunes, of course, to maintain the propaganda machine and to keep us all in line, to keep us all terrified. And they succeed, by and large, in that endeavor. I mean, I could go on talking about it until next Thursday, if you want me to, because it's a never-ending internal monologue, isn't it? Is why do we let them do this to us? How is it that they maintain their grip upon our actions to the extent that the however many billion of us there are, because I'm irritated by it and angry about it, but most of us because we're fucking starving and incredibly poor and really have no power at all. We're completely held under the thumb. The working class all over the world is held like that in a kind of like grip and never allowed, so that we don't rise up and go, no, are you kidding? Why should I work for 50 cents an hour making bloody gym shoes for people in America? Why? What? It doesn't make any sense.
What's so completely elegant about the song is, it's called A Gunner's Dream, and it's from the standpoint of the gunner. But then there's a couple of lines that I just want to repeat, because I want us to think about the enormity of how simple the dream is. And he says, and hold on to the dream, a place to stay, enough to eat.
Somewhere old heroes shuffle safely down the street, where we can speak out loud about our doubts and fears. And what's more, no one ever disappears. You never hear their standard issue kicking in the door, where you can relax on both sides of the tracks and maniacs don't blow holes in bandsmen by remote control. And everyone has recourse to the law and no one kills the children anymore.
A place to stay, enough to eat. Somewhere old heroes shuffle safely down the street, where you can speak out loud about your doubts and fears. And what's more, no one ever disappears. You never hear their standard issue kicking in your door. You can relax on both sides of the tracks, and maniacs don't blow holes in bandsmen by remote control. And everyone has recourse to the law, and no one kills the children anymore. No one kills the children anymore.
Just in case you thought I might have forgotten a single word of it.
No, I know you haven't forgotten a single word of it, but the issue is there is such simplicity in the dream. And I wanted you to reflect a little bit about that, because, I'd like to come to the idea about, we can speak out loud about our doubts and fears, because God, you wrote that in 1983 as a dream of the gunner. How far we are now in 2020. Julian Assange is in Belmarsh prison. You participated in the Belmarsh tribunal. Seriously, is that not our dream still, so that we can speak out loud about our doubts and fears? 1983, you released that song. 2020, it's as pressing an issue. 1983, you released the song where you say, we want a place to stay, enough to eat. In 2020, half the human population is starving. Yeah. I mean, there is something simple and enduring about this message.
Well, there is. And there's something simple and enduring about the dates. If you think it's only one more year to go after I wrote it to get to 1984, which fits very neatly, and there's no paradox with 1948, which is not only when George Orwell wrote 1984 in 1948, but it's also when we unanimously signed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Paris. And actually, the gunner's dream is only that. It's just the 30 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's what I'd say again and again and again and again. If we could somehow enforce that Universal Declaration, almost all our problems would disappear overnight, literally gone. Because enshrined in that document is a methodology and a set of rules to contain that methodology for human life to be bearable. or even enjoyable for everyone. It's all there, but we don't. We go, oh Christ, we don't want any of that. How can we make money if we give people rights? We can't. No, we have rights, but they can't. The idea that it's universal is completely, it's a non-negotiable no-go area for the oligarchs, is that. So no wonder the gunner is still dreaming about it. Floating down through the clouds, memories come rushing up to me now. In the corner of some foreign field, I had a dream. I like that. I like the image, the idea that he doesn't know he's going to die because he's floating. So, but he is. But he's got some intimation of his mortality because the gunner, refers to Rupert Brooke's poem by talking about the corner of some foreign field. In the corner of some foreign field, the gunner sleeps tonight. What's done is done. We cannot just write off his final scene, take heed of the dream. Well, that's sort of what I do with every waking moment that I'm not cuddling the dog or my missus. I'm thinking about the gunner's dream. And, you know, when you walk down the street and you pass the homeless person, it's the gunner's dream and it's always there. It's never left us because we're not allowed to turn the gunner's dream into reality because we don't have enough power to do that. And so all of this, all the work that you do with Tricontinental Institute and organizing people all around the world and also, you know, distributing articles through Globetrotter and stuff like that is all about trying to wrest power from the oligarchs and make people think. I mean, I think I may have sent you the ballroom. I'm not sure if I did, but I remonstrate in the very last song that I wrote, which was like 3 weeks ago. It's about the same thing. There's a verse in it that goes, you can build a bomb at Raytheon, but they'll sell it on in Kalamazoo. And some crazy motherfucker's bound to drop it on a busload of kids going to school. You know, and it goes, you can throw up your hands in denial. Something's in your head. I'm just an innocent cog, just doing my job. But those little Yemeni kids will still be dead. Justify your actions in your head, right? Just an innocent cog, just doing my job. But those little Yemeni kids will still be dead. So all those people, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people in America building fucking bombs to drop on children in the Yemen. And that's what they do. And they go to work and do they ever think about, I've no idea. But I say to them in my song, so when you're walking through the factory gate, it's on Monday when you're walking through the factory gates or on Friday when you're picking up your check, just remember, because I'm talking about a foreign father of a dead child, just remember him sitting on the curb like the bicycle thief, but with no boy to put his arms around Daddy's neck. Do you remember the final scene of The Bicycle Thief, where he's sitting there with Bruno? And he's been caught and then let off by the angry mob, and Bruno's crying, and they're sitting there in that mountain of shame, which has been brought upon him just because he tried to scrape a fucking living, you know, in post-war Italy. So I carry The Bicycle Thief with me as well because that film is like in one of my top 5 movies ever, and so something as powerful as that just stays with you for the rest of your life, and so it's now wound its way into a new song of mine from a couple of weeks ago. The last line of The Bar says, come sit by the fireside and hold me in your arms and tell me how was life before the cops, which suddenly suddenly is full of whole new meaning for people, because the cops has now become the thing about which the Americans are going to have their civil war. There's going to be the Proud Boys and all the arseholes with M15s lined up on one side, with the cops, having a fight with people who want to observe the gunner's dream. People who want democracy and freedom of the press. So people who want Assange to be, released because the only things he's done are great, truly great, to better inform us and to maybe help us a little bit in our struggle to turn the globe into a slightly more humane place than it is, i.e. to fulfill the gunner's dream. So and they're going to fucking kill each other over this. They're going to be out there having pitched gun battles. And who do you think the cops are going to, which side of the cops are going to, I know which side they are. They're not going to be fighting, they're not going to be shooting guns at the Proud Boys and the Ku Klux Klan and all the other neo-fascists who are itching to get out there with their semi-automatic weapons and kill commies. That's what they want to do. Or kill anybody, and kill blacks, and kill immigrants, and kill Muslims, and just kill anybody, just to make themselves feel less inadequate than they feel deeply and desperately inadequate. We know enough about psychology to know that that's what makes people like that. And I can't feel sorry for them, though. I can only feel angry. You meet them in the street all the time. You meet them when you go into a garage to fill up and you see, and they're all there in their pickup trucks with their tattoos and their fucking Trump 2020 stickers and they're this, that, and that. They're desperate for war, for an internal civil war. They want to get in the streets and kill people. It looks like fun. If you're not in it, war to the Proud Boys looks like fun. Fucking great. It's like a video game. And you get to kill people and that makes you feel better. It's terrifying.
No, this is why, look, one of the first pieces of literature I read, which really affected me on this anti-war kind of thing, was Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, which is written about, as you said, that Great War. There's a character in there who is suffering from shell shock. Yeah. And he's a side character, not a main character, but he drives a lot of the narrative because it's about veterans, suicide, and so on. I mean, in The Gunner's Dream, which, when I first heard The Gunner's Dream, it was around when I read Mrs. Dalloway. And there's a line in The Gunner's Dream that is very strong. It's interesting because your new song, you also talk about dreams, except in The Gunner's Dream, you say his dream is making me insane. Yeah. His dream is making me insane. It was driving me insane. His dream is driving me insane.
Because it's unattainable. It's the unattainability of it's not his dream. His dream is perfect. Here's this guy who's in the middle of a war. He's on the end of a parachute. He's going to die. But still in that predicament, he's having this dream that somehow it will have been worth it. I assume this is the dream my father had before they were overrun by a panzer division and he was shot dead. He was probably still, that's why he went to Italy, was because he had this dream of a better world. That's why the International Brigade all went to Spain in 1936 onwards. Well, no, that's the Front Populaire is 36, it was later. There is this kind of egalitarian dream that we all dream and we go on dreaming it, whether we're the guy, whoever we are. And it drives us insane that the more we want it and the more we work for it and the more empirical data there is pressing the case for it, because it is also the only way that the planet can survive for a few more hundred years, is to adopt the gunner's dream, part and parcel, and to start collaborating with one another and looking after one another. We now know that the neoliberal notion that growth is what's going to help everybody and capitalism, we know it doesn't. We see it. The evidence is all around it. The world is disappearing in front of our very eyes. But the magnetic attraction of man and gold is so powerful that we ignore the Midas touch. You know, well, we don't, but they do. And they couldn't care less about human rights.
Circling quickly back to the Gunner's Dream, again, you know, final cut 1983. This is the period when Ronald Reagan is in the White House, when the dirty wars in Central America have picked up once again, a cycle of dirty wars. It's a very depressing period, and in a sense, we keep seeming to fall into these depressing periods in cycles. We're back in a depressing period. There is not necessarily a dirty war in Central America, but there's this terrible hybrid war against Venezuela. There's a blockade on Cuba. There is just so much that's distressing in the world. Where do you go to pull hope from? You know, what keeps you going from a song you wrote in the 1980s to songs you're writing now? They're songs about the horrible things of the world, but they're also songs of hope. Where do you go to find that?
What, the hope? That's the hardest quest of all. To keep a grip on hope is really difficult. How do I do it? I do it by being looking at the microcosm, really. I say, all right, let me tell you this. There's a bloke in Texas who, through one of my correspondence, email correspondence, I discovered, he's a vet, he's a Vietnam vet, he's been a political activist, blah, 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 blah. He had a couple of strokes a few months ago, and it came to my attention. So I looked into him to see if he was real or not. I decided he was real. And he was crowdfunding, and I don't know what, he was looking to raise 20 grand or something, and he raised, you know, 3 or something like that. And I read his story and looked into him and then checked with somebody who knew him. They said, this guy is 100% really good man, you know. But so I decided to help him. So I sent him money. And I'm not going to tell you his name because it might embarrass him and it gets complicated. But so, first of all, he changed his, after he'd accepted it, he changed his bank details because he suddenly panicked and thought I might be trying to steal money out of his bank account. So we had to go through it all again, and I had to somehow convince him that I was real, you know, which I did. Anyway, I've remained in contact with him, and it's only been a few months. And I sent him, I showed you a picture of our new puppy. I sent him a picture of that puppy because I know he's a dog owner. And it was the day after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. And I said, bummer about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And he sent me this very eloquent letter back, desperately unhappy about the loss and the monumental loss of this great, wonderful woman, and terrified of what may happen, you know, if the Supreme Court suddenly turns into 6-3 and is like that for the next 10 years or something. And blah, blah. What am I trying to tell you? Oh, but also, there's a bit of chat in this letter. He said, thank you again, and blah, blah, blah. He said, my house is old and falling down and this and that. Yeah, but he said, with the help you've given me, I'm turning 2 rooms into lettable space for 2 immigrant families so that they've got somewhere warm and dry to put their feet up for a fraction of the money they're paying in the awful places that they're living at the moment. So he says, that's part of what I have here. So he says, so we're turning now into a sanctuary. He said that, so I'll have 2 immigrant families, and also I've been providing shelter for women who've been raped in the army by good old US soldier boys, and who are getting none of the help and support they need from the VA and so on. So here's this guy, he's had 2 little strokes, and he's still bursting and bubbling with love for his fellow human beings. Well, that's where you find your hope, is in little small personal stories about people who demonstrate that the gunner's dream lives on. And it would only have to be happening between one dreamer who's also an activist and who acts upon the gunner's dream, and somebody who needs it, because it's the relationship between the helper, giver, whatever, and the person, and the person in need, in this case, immigrants with nowhere to live or whatever. It's that symbiotic relationship that it becomes a furnace of joy for everyone in it. And that is where hope springs. You know, I feel quite emotional even talking about it. All you need is that one little thing, and you go, you know what? This is worth it. You have to keep fighting. You have to give, by however small the ripples may be when you drop your pebble in the pond, they are going to reach other ripples, or they're going to reach the shore somewhere, and everything is a cause and has an effect. So you have to believe the dream is that your pebble means something, and it doesn't matter how much it is. What matters is that it's a pebble of love. That's all that's important. And when you get an echo that comes back out of the darkness, you know, a ripple, you feel that tiny ripple from another pebble of love, and you go, this is worth it. This is worth every ounce of energy that you put into it. Not least because if you're the two-stroke guy and you're helping, you're almost certainly getting more out of it than the people who are so grateful to you for giving them a roof over their heads. Because that is the nature of the collective. That is the nature of community. That is the nature of loving one another and trying to help one another. So that's where hope is.
That's beautiful. Roger Waters, thanks a lot.
Not at all.